Steelmanning Socialism by George's Ghost. In this year of our Lord, 1776, when the minds of men are stirred by the pure light of reason and the immutable laws of nature and nature's God, it behooves the philosophic observer to map the great contending forces of governance with geometric clarity. Let us therefore conceive the political world not as a linear contest of extremes, but as a square erected upon two axes of first principle: the horizontal, distinguishing the direction of authority, whether toward collective equity or individual liberty, and the vertical, distinguishing the extent of authority, whether expansive in its superintendence or restrained within narrow bounds. At the four corners of this noble square stand the archetypes of our age. In the upper right, the establishment republican, who would wed the vigor of commerce to the steady hand of a large and ordered government, preserving property and hierarchy, while directing public force towards stability and empire. In the lower right, the libertarian, champion of minimal government, who trusts the invisible harmonies of voluntary exchange and private right to order society with the least coercion. In the upper left, the socialist, who calls upon a robust public authority to temper the excesses of acquisition and secure the general welfare through deliberate collective provision. In the lower left, the communist, who dreams of a society so perfectly fused in common purpose that formal government itself withers, all things held in common by the spontaneous fraternity of equals. These 4 points do not float in idle speculation. They arise necessarily from the twin questions every polity must answer. How much power shall the public wield? And to what end shall it be directed? Yet the discourse of our time hath degenerated into a most barren and injurious contest, that betwixt the capitalist and the communist. Each party assails a phantom of its own contrivance. The defender of capital decries every proposal of mutual aid as the opening wedge of tyranny and expropriation, invoking the sanguinary annals of past experiments wherein unchecked collective power devoured both liberty and bread. The advocate of common interest, in turn, paints every defense of private property and market exchange as mere avarice cloaked in philosophy, blind to the generative miracles of industry and invention. Thus do both sides contend with straw men, and agreement is forever stalled upon a field of caricatures. Unity is rendered impossible when each combatant refuses to grant his adversary the charity of his strongest rather than his weakest formulation. Here, then, arises the necessity of sublation, a higher reconciliation that doth not abolish, but perfects the partial truths on either side. Such a work hath been essayed by the philosopher Dragon, who steelmanneth the socialist impulse with admirable rigour. He asserteth that socialism, rightly understood, is no alien doctrine, but literally the definition of life itself, the cooperative power whereby discrete elements are raised into harmonious and productive unity. This truth he anchoreth in Marx's own equation of capital's circuit, M equals C equals M prime, wherein money, M, is laid out upon commodities, C, to produce a greater return, M prime. In Dragon's reading, this circuit reveals not mere exploitation, but the fundamental logic of value creation through transformation and relation. Life itself operates by this principle. The organism gathers resources, organizes them through cooperative internal structures, and generates surplus vitality. Socialism, thus conceived, is the conscious extension of this biological and economic truth into the social realm. The recognition that cooperation, rightly ordered, multiplies the commonwealth. The capitalist, fearing the bogey of past misadventures, hath too often rigidified socialism into a scarecrow of pure confiscation and centralized command. Yet history's tragedies, the famines, the gulags, the abolition of incentive, sprang not from the charitable impulse toward cooperation, but from its marriage to unlimited power, unmoored from constitutional restraint. When the tremendous energies of collective action are unleashed without the checks and balances so wisely devised by the founders of these United States: separation of powers, enumerated rights, federalism, and the vigilant protection of individual conscience and property. Then indeed doth the experiment turn monstrous. The remedy, therefore, lies not in the sterile repetition of old antagonisms, but in a constitutional socialism tempered by the same genius that guarded liberty against monarchy and majoritarian tyranny alike. Let the power of cooperation be welcomed where it demonstrably multiplies human flourishing, in mutual societies, in prudent public works, in the cultivation of virtue and knowledge, yet ever bounded by inviolable rights, transparent law, and the dispersal of authority. Let the capitalist's sacred fire of emulation and personal stake be preserved as the engine of discovery, while its excesses are curbed not by the arbitrary fist, but by the steady scales of justice and competition. In such a synthesis, the square of political distinctions need not collapse into civil war. The establishment Republican and the Libertarian may teach the left the blessings of limitation and spontaneous order. The Socialist, and even the tempered Communist, may remind the right that man is born for society as well as for himself, and that the wealth of nations is finally measured in the elevation of the commonweal. Thus shall straw men be burned away, phantoms dispersed, and the Republic ascend toward that more perfect union envisioned by the sages of our age, where liberty and fraternity are no longer at daggers drawn, but joined in fruitful and enduring covenant.